The sun was setting over the Sheik's grand villa, its golden rays reflecting against tall marble pillars and wide glass windows. Inside the estate, the air was filled with quiet elegance. The staff moved carefully, each person carrying out their duties with respect and silence. The Sheikh, a man known across the Middle East for his wealth, generosity, and power, had returned from a long day of business meetings. His empire stretched across oil fields, real estate projects, and international investments. People admired him, feared him, and some, secretly, wanted to take advantage of him. That evening, the Sheikh carried with him something more than the usual documents. It was a proposal, a potential deal that promised to expand his fortune by hundreds of millions. The file had been handed to him by trusted business contacts, who insisted it was an opportunity not to miss. The Sheikh placed the heavy folder on his polished wooden desk, his eyes scanning over the glossy pages, the official stamps, the seals, and the bold signatures. Everything appeared genuine. The mansion was not just a home but a symbol of his status. Chandeliers sparkled above, the floors shone like mirrors, and in the corner, a young girl quietly read a small book while waiting for her mother, the maid, to finish her evening duties. Her name was Amina. She was only 16, with a curious mind and a love for languages. She had grown up in the shadows of wealth, watching people of power pass by her every day, but she never felt small. Instead, she observed, listened, and learned. Amina's mother, Fatima, had worked in the Sheik's household for years. She was humble, respectful, and grateful for the job that allowed her to raise her daughter. She often reminded Amina to keep her distance from private affairs of the family and never to speak unless spoken to. But Amina's mind was restless. She loved reading, especially poetry and stories written in classical Arabic. Her teachers often praised her for her sharp memory and attention to detail. That evening, as the Sheikh reviewed the proposal, his advisors surrounded him. They spoke in low voices, pointing at numbers, graphs, and legal clauses. The room smelled of oud, the fragrance burning in a golden incense holder by the window. The Sheikh leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard, his eyes heavy but curious. Amina, who had just finished her reading, stood up and quietly walked past the open study door. She had no intention of intruding, but a few words caught her attention. The men were reading out parts of the contract aloud, and the moment she heard the Arabic sentences, her steps slowed. She was surprised. Something in the way the Arabic words were written sounded unusual, almost unnatural. The accent of the man reading was foreign, and the sentence structure felt wrong. Amina's heart began to beat faster. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as she listened carefully. To most people, it would sound normal, but to her, who had spent years studying the beauty of the Arabic language, the mistakes stood out like stains on white cloth. The Sheikh, however, seemed convinced. His advisors nodded, flipping through pages, showing him charts of promised profits. "This will be a historic investment," one of them said. The Sheik's face softened, as though he was already imagining the deal secured. Amina's lips parted slightly. Should she say something? No, she told herself. She was just a maid's daughter. Who would listen to her? She stepped back, her heart torn between silence and truth. But the mistakes she heard kept ringing in her ears. Words had been twisted, grammar was broken, and even cultural references in the text seemed off. For example, a sentence meant to show respect to Arab tradition had been written in a way that no Arab would ever phrase it. To Amina, it was as if someone had dressed a stranger in royal clothes, hoping no one would notice the disguise. Her mother appeared behind her, gently tapping her shoulder. "Come, Amina," she whispered. "Don't stand near the Sheik's study. It is not our place." Amina nodded quickly and walked with her mother, but her mind was restless. Later that night, as her mother finished cleaning, Amina sat quietly in the kitchen corner, thinking deeply. What if this was important? What if the sheik was about to make a mistake? But how could she, a girl of 16 with no position or authority, dare to speak up? She remembered the stern look in her mother's eyes whenever she reminded her, "Respect your place, Amina. We serve, we do not question." Yet, the thought of staying silent made her chest feel heavy. She admired the sheik. Everyone knew of his generosity, how he built schools, funded hospitals, and helped families in need. People in villages far away whispered his name with gratitude. Could she really sit back and let him be misled? That night, sleep did not come easily. Amina lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the Arabic sentences she had heard. She whispered them to herself, correcting them in her mind, realizing more and more that they were not written by someone who truly understood the language. "This is not right," she muttered. Her heart told her it was no small matter. The next day, the sheik rose early for prayer and business. His advisors were already preparing schedules and phone calls. The house bustled with activity. Amina tried to go about her day as usual, helping her mother with small chores, reading whenever she found a quiet moment. But her eyes kept drifting to the study door. Fate has a way of testing courage at the right moment. That afternoon, as the sheik walked down the hallway, Amina happened to pass by, carrying a tray of tea her mother had asked her to deliver to the kitchen. Her steps slowed again when she overheard the sheik speaking on the phone. He was discussing the same proposal. His voice was calm, but confident, as if he was preparing to finalize the deal. The words struck her like a spark. She felt her throat tighten. This was her moment. She could remain silent, pretend she never noticed the mistakes, and let events unfold. Or she could gather every ounce of courage and speak, knowing it might cost her mother's job or even her own place in the household. She stood there, frozen for a few seconds. The tray trembled in her hands. Her breath grew shallow. What if he becomes angry? What if he laughs at me, she thought. But then another voice inside her whispered, "What if you are right? What if you are the only one who can see the truth?" At that moment, the young girl who was just the maid's daughter no longer felt small. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon her. She took a deep breath, held her head high, and waited for the sheik to finish his call. Her heart beat so loudly she could almost hear it echo. Her palms grew damp, and her knees felt weak. Yet she knew she could not walk away. Something inside her told her this was not an ordinary mistake. This was something that could change everything. And that is where the story began, when a 16-year-old girl, armed not with wealth or power, but with courage and knowledge, stood on the edge of a choice that would soon alter the course of a billionaire's life. The next morning, the mansion was alive with its usual rhythm. The staff moved through the corridors efficiently, quietly ensuring everything was perfect for the day ahead. Amina, the maid's daughter, woke up early, her mind still buzzing from the events of the previous evening. She could not shake the memory of the proposal and the strange way the Arabic words had been written. Even after a night of sleep, the sentences kept echoing in her mind, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. She sat by the small window in the kitchen, sipping warm milk, her eyes scanning the garden where the sun's rays were just beginning to touch the flowers. She could hear the sheik's advisors talking in hushed tones as they prepared documents in the study. Something about the atmosphere felt tense, as though the house itself knew that something unusual was about to happen. Amina's mother, Fatima, noticed her daughter's quiet demeanor. "You are thinking too much again, Amina," she said gently, trying to distract her. "Come, help me with these dishes." Fatima's hands were worn from years of work, but her eyes were kind. She had always admired her daughter's intelligence, yet she worried that Amina's curiosity might one day get her into trouble. "I can help, mother, but I need a few minutes," Amina replied, her eyes still distant. "I need to think about something I heard yesterday." Fatima paused, sensing the seriousness in her daughter's voice. "Be careful," she said softly. Sometimes, it's best to stay silent. You must understand that we live in a world of rules, and speaking up may not always be safe. Amina nodded, but her mind was already racing. She knew she had to understand what she had overheard. She had spent years learning Arabic, reading poetry, classical texts, and even news articles. Language, to her, was like a living thing. Its rhythms, its structures, its subtleties were impossible to ignore. The mistakes she had heard were not minor, they were deliberate signs that something was wrong. By mid-morning, the sheikh was in the study again, reviewing the proposal. His advisors had laid out the contracts neatly on his large oak desk, and their expressions were serious, almost anxious. They believed the deal was genuine and were eager for the sheikh to approve it. To them, the numbers and signatures were proof enough. But Amina, standing quietly by the doorway, felt a growing sense of unease. She noticed details others seemed to miss, the unusual word choices, the incorrect punctuation, the way formal phrases were slightly off. Every sentence she heard contained subtle errors that no professional, no matter how careless, would make in such an important document. To Amina, it was like seeing a painting where the brush strokes were almost perfect but the colors were just slightly wrong. Her heart pounded as she realized the seriousness of the situation. If these documents were genuine, nothing would be wrong, but they were not. She had a sinking feeling that the sheikh was about to trust people who were not trustworthy. Amina tried to remain calm, but inside, a storm of fear and responsibility raged. She thought about what could happen if the sheikh signed the contracts. Millions of dollars could be lost. People's livelihoods could be affected. And all of this could have been prevented if only someone noticed the errors. The thought made her hands tremble slightly. She looked around the study, noting how deeply engrossed everyone was in the papers. No one else seemed to notice the red flags she could see so clearly. As she pondered, her mind flashed back to the lessons she had learned in school. Her Arabic teacher had once told her that language is more than words, it is a reflection of thought and culture. If someone tries to imitate it without understanding, it will always reveal them. That knowledge now felt powerful, almost like a shield she could use to protect the sheikh. Amina knew she could not act rashly. She needed a plan. If she spoke out of turn, she might be dismissed or ignored. She decided to wait until she was certain of the mistakes, to gather her courage, and to find the right moment to speak. But the more she listened, the more obvious the errors became. It was not just grammar, it was the tone, the phrasing, even the cultural references. Each mistake screamed imposter to her trained ear. Hours passed, and the sheikh continued reviewing the proposal. He occasionally asked questions, and his advisors confidently reassured him. To anyone else, everything seemed normal. But Amina's mind could not rest. She began to cross-check the sentences in her head, comparing them to proper Arabic structure, recalling the rules and nuances she had memorized over years of study. Finally, she noticed a phrase that seemed especially suspicious. It was a sentence that was supposed to show respect to the sheikh and his family, a formal expression of loyalty common in Arabic business correspondence. But the wording was twisted. The words themselves were correct, but their arrangement was unnatural. A native speaker would never phrase it this way, not in a serious, official document. The phrase was a subtle trap, perhaps intended to mislead or confuse. Amina felt a mixture of fear and determination. She realized that this mistake alone could be enough to convince the sheikh that something was wrong, if only she could point it out correctly. But how? She was just a maid's daughter. How could she make the sheikh listen without insulting the advisors or appearing presumptuous? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. It was Fatima, carrying a tray of tea. She had noticed her daughter's intense focus and wanted to give her a small distraction. "Here, Amina. Take this to the study," she said kindly. Amina hesitated. She could bring the tea and retreat, or she could take it as an opportunity to observe the documents more closely. She chose the latter. With careful steps, she entered the study, tray in hand. The advisors glanced at her politely, and the sheikh smiled briefly. She placed the tea down and, without drawing attention, leaned slightly closer to glance at the papers. Her eyes scanned the sentences, and her fears were confirmed. Every page contained small but significant mistakes. Names were spelled incorrectly in certain places, sentences were awkwardly constructed, and formal expressions were inconsistent. Amina's mind raced. These were not careless errors. They were deliberate signs of a scam, designed to trick someone into believing the documents were authentic. Her heart sank at the thought of the consequences if the sheikh did not notice them. Millions of dollars could be lost, and the reputation of the sheikh and his advisors could be damaged. She stepped back quietly, her mind made up. She could no longer remain silent. The fear of speaking up was real, but the weight of responsibility outweighed it. She thought of all the times she had studied, all the hours spent reading and learning, and she realized that knowledge came with responsibility. If she could prevent a disaster, she had to try. As the day wore on, Amina waited for the perfect moment. She observed the sheikh closely, noting his gestures, his expressions, and the way he interacted with his advisors. She rehearsed in her mind how she would speak, what words she would use, and how she could present the truth respectfully. Finally, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows across the study, the sheikh set the documents down and looked up, weary but confident. Amina took a deep breath. This was her chance. She could no longer remain in the background. She had to act, using only her courage and knowledge to protect the sheikh from a mistake that could have cost him everything. And in that quiet, golden-lit study, the stage was set for a moment that would change everything, a moment when a young girl, armed only with her sharp mind and determination, prepared to step forward and reveal a truth that no one else had noticed. The moment had arrived. Amina's heart pounded so hard that she feared it would be heard over the quiet rustle of papers and the soft murmurs of the sheikh's advisors. For days, she had rehearsed in her mind how she would approach him, choosing her words carefully so as not to offend anyone while still revealing the mistakes she had discovered. Every step she had taken in the last few days had led to this instant. Now, standing just outside the study, she felt the weight of responsibility settle firmly on her shoulders. The sheikh was seated behind his grand desk, leaning slightly forward as he examined another page of the proposal. His face was calm, yet there was a hint of fatigue in his eyes from the long hours of reviewing documents. Around him, his advisors whispered, confident that the deal would soon be finalized. To everyone else, the situation appeared routine, but Amina saw clearly the danger that lay hidden in plain sight. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the trembling in her hands. I must speak now, she thought. There may not be another chance. She stepped inside the study, carrying a small notebook she had used to note the errors she noticed. The sound of her shoes on the polished floor seemed unusually loud in the still room. Every eye turned toward her for a brief moment, curiosity and mild surprise in their expressions. Amina swallowed hard and spoke, her voice soft but firm. Excuse me, Sheikh, she said, her words trembling slightly at first. I think there is something wrong with these documents. A hush fell over the room. The advisors exchanged glances, some raising eyebrows in disbelief. The sheikh looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and curiosity. And who might you be? He asked politely but with a subtle edge. My name is Amina, she replied, I am the maid's daughter. I could not stay silent. I noticed something in the documents, mistakes in the Arabic language. Some sentences are not correct, and they seem unusual. I think the documents might not be genuine. For a moment, the room was silent. The sheikh leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. Amina could feel the weight of his gaze. She knew he was trying to understand whether she was speaking out of ignorance or whether she genuinely had a valid point. Her stomach twisted in nerves, but she held her head high, determined not to back down. One of the advisors cleared his throat, his tone dismissive. "Sheikh, she is just a child. Perhaps she does not understand the complexity of these contracts. These are highly technical documents. Mistakes in language do not matter here." Amina shook her head gently. "I may be young, but I have studied Arabic for many years. I read classical texts and poetry. These sentences, they are not correct. Even a small mistake in phrasing can show that the writer is not truly a native speaker. Please, Sheikh, let me explain." The Sheikh's eyes softened. He gestured for her to continue, a quiet curiosity in his expression. "Go on," he said. "Tell me what you have found." Amina stepped closer to the desk, opening her notebook. She pointed to the first sentence that had struck her as unusual. "Here," she said. "This sentence is meant to show respect, but the words are in the wrong order. A native speaker would never phrase it like this. It is subtle, but it shows the writer may not understand the culture or the language fully." The Sheikh leaned forward, reading over the sentence. His advisors shifted uncomfortably, some frowning, others exchanging uneasy glances. "Continue," he said, encouraging her to go on. She carefully explained several more examples, pointing out errors in grammar, awkward phrasing, and cultural inaccuracies. Each time, she spoke softly but confidently, demonstrating knowledge that no ordinary observer would have. With each correction, the Sheikh's expression changed from curiosity to concern. He listened carefully, asking questions to ensure he understood the nature of the mistakes. As she spoke, Amina felt her nerves settle. She realized that she had not only found the errors but was also conveying them clearly enough that the Sheikh could see the truth for himself. Her fear of being dismissed began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. She was no longer just a bystander, she was the person who could prevent a disaster. Finally, she reached the most significant point. "This phrase," she said, pointing to a sentence that was particularly misleading, was meant to sound formal and respectful. But the words are mixed up, and the tone is wrong. It is something a scammer would write to trick someone who is not paying attention. If you sign these documents without noticing, you could be misled." The Sheikh was silent for a long moment. He closed the proposal and leaned back in his chair, his hands steepled together. The room felt heavy with anticipation. Even the advisors were quiet now, sensing the gravity of what was unfolding. Then, in a calm but firm voice, the Sheikh said, "You are certain of what you are saying?" Amina nodded. "Yes, Sheikh. I have checked each sentence. I have read them carefully, and I have compared them to correct Arabic structures. These documents, they are not genuine. They are a scam." For the first time, a smile appeared on the Sheikh's face, not a casual smile, but one of genuine admiration. "Remarkable," he said softly. "A child notices what adults, with all their experience, have overlooked. You have courage, and you have knowledge. That is rare." The advisors shifted in their seats, some frowning, others still skeptical. But the Sheikh held up a hand. "I trust her judgment. Let us review these documents carefully, again, in light of what she has pointed out." Together, they went through the proposal once more. Every sentence Amina had highlighted revealed errors that the advisors had missed. Names were wrong, numbers were inconsistent, and cultural references were entirely inaccurate. The documents, once thought flawless, now appeared suspicious, almost fraudulent. The Sheikh's face darkened as he realized how close he had come to being deceived. Millions of dollars could have been lost. His advisors looked ashamed, recognizing that their confidence had blinded them to the truth. Amina remained quiet, letting them work. She could feel the tension in the room, but also a quiet sense of pride. She had spoken up when it mattered most, and her observations were being confirmed. The sheikh, for his part, seemed deeply impressed not only by her knowledge but also by her bravery. After several minutes of careful review, the sheikh finally set the documents aside. He looked at Amina with gratitude. "You have saved me from a great mistake," he said sincerely. "Many adults would have overlooked these details, but you saw the truth. You have prevented a disaster that could have cost hundreds of millions." Amina felt a mixture of relief and humility. She had done what she believed was right, yet she had not expected such recognition. She glanced at her mother, who had quietly entered the room, eyes wide with pride and disbelief. Fatima's hand rested gently on her daughter's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the courage she had shown. The sheikh turned to his advisors. "Let this be a lesson to all of us," he said firmly. "Experience is valuable, but careful observation, knowledge, and courage, qualities often found in unexpected places, are equally important. Today, we have been reminded that wisdom can come from anyone, regardless of age or position." Amina's cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and shyness. She had only wanted to do what was right, not to be praised. Yet, the sheikh's words made her heart swell. She realized that courage, when paired with knowledge and honesty, could make a difference even against powerful forces. That evening, as the sun set over the grand villa once more, Amina sat quietly in the kitchen, reflecting on the day's events. The house seemed to hum with a different energy now, one of respect and awareness. The sheikh had personally thanked her, and her mother's eyes shone with pride. Amina knew that her life had changed, even if in small ways, and she felt a new sense of purpose growing within her. She understood that her actions had not only saved the sheikh but also shown her the importance of standing up for truth, no matter the risks. Knowledge, courage, and honesty had proven stronger than fear. And in the quiet moments of that evening, she promised herself that she would continue to learn, to observe, and to act when the time called for it. The day had begun like any other, but it ended with a profound realization: one voice, brave enough to speak, could prevent disaster, change the course of events, and earn respect in ways she had never imagined. The very next morning, the sheikh summoned his advisors and a small team of trusted investigators. The atmosphere in the villa was tense, charged with urgency and a sense of importance. After Amina's revelations, no one could underestimate the significance of the potential scam. The sheikh himself was calm but focused, moving through the documents with deliberate care. Every page that had once seemed flawless now raised questions and doubts. Amina observed quietly from a distance, feeling a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Though the sheikh had trusted her insights, she knew the situation was far from over. These people, whoever they were, had gone to great lengths to make the proposal appear authentic. The challenge now was to confirm her suspicions and prevent any financial damage. The investigators began by cross-checking every name, company, and contact listed in the documents. Each phone number and email address was verified. They traced the origins of the contracts and examined the supposed signatures of international business figures. Within hours, troubling inconsistencies began to appear. Some of the companies listed did not exist. The signatures were fabricated. Certain official seals were altered, almost imperceptibly, but enough for trained eyes to detect. The sheikh watched the investigators carefully, his mind absorbing every detail. He knew that billions could be at stake if the scam went unnoticed. Yet, he also felt a deep sense of pride and relief that Amina's sharp eyes had prevented him from being deceived. Without her, the errors might have gone unnoticed until it was too late. Amina's own heart raced as she observed the process. She had expected the investigation to confirm her fears, but seeing the sheer scale of the deceit was overwhelming. This was not a simple trick, it was an elaborate scam, meticulously planned by people who had hoped to manipulate even the most cautious investor. The sophistication of the plan made her shiver, yet it also strengthened her resolve. She had acted at the right moment, and now the truth was coming to light. As the day progressed, the investigators began contacting the supposed representatives of the investment group. One by one, they discovered that the phone numbers either went unanswered or were linked to false identities. Emails bounced back or were traced to temporary accounts created for the purpose of the scam. The Sheik's advisors, who had initially been confident in the proposal, now looked stunned. Their faces reflected a mix of embarrassment, concern, and astonishment. The Sheikh, however, remained composed. He had a long history of navigating complex business situations, and he understood that mistakes could happen even to the most experienced people. But what impressed him most was not just the detection of the fraud, it was the courage and intelligence shown by Amina, a young girl who had no formal position in his company. Her observations had saved him from a massive loss, and now the full extent of her contribution was becoming clear. By late afternoon, the investigators had pieced together the scam's design. The fraudsters had intended to exploit trust, using language and documents that appeared authentic to most people. They had included official-looking stamps, signatures, and legal jargon to make the proposal seem legitimate. Their plan was meticulous, targeting the Sheik's wealth and reputation. Amina's notebook, which contained her detailed observations, became a key reference for the investigators. They compared her notes with the actual errors and found that every mistake she had highlighted matched evidence of forgery. Her knowledge of Arabic and attention to detail had effectively guided the investigation, narrowing the search and saving valuable time. The Sheikh decided to take action immediately. He called for a meeting with the key advisors and instructed them to freeze all communications with the supposed investors. Every financial channel that could have been used to transfer funds was secured, preventing the scammers from gaining any access. The investigators prepared detailed reports for legal authorities, documenting the fraud and ensuring that those responsible could be pursued through proper channels. Throughout the investigation, Amina remained quiet but observant. She learned more than she had ever expected about how large-scale business operations functioned, how fraud could be detected, and the importance of precision and vigilance. For a girl who had once been limited to the household chores and study of her school books, this was an extraordinary experience. She realized that courage and knowledge could open doors and protect people in ways she had never imagined. As the evidence mounted, it became increasingly clear that the scammers had invested weeks, if not months, in preparing the proposal. They had anticipated scrutiny and had crafted documents designed to pass through ordinary checks. However, Amina's keen eye had revealed details that even seasoned professionals had overlooked. Her contribution was not just helpful, it was critical. By evening, the Sheikh gathered everyone in the study. The room, which had witnessed countless business decisions, now hosted a different kind of gathering, a moment of recognition and gratitude. The investigators summarized their findings, showing how the scammers had created a fake investment group, forged signatures, and planted subtle errors in the documents. The scale of the fraud was staggering, yet none of it had succeeded because one young girl had noticed the discrepancies. The Sheikh looked directly at Amina. "You have not only prevented a financial disaster," he said, his voice firm but warm, "but you have reminded us all that intelligence and courage are not defined by age, status, or position. You have acted when others hesitated, and for that, I am deeply grateful." Amina's cheeks flushed. She had never expected such words. She had acted out of a sense of responsibility, not recognition, yet hearing the Sheikh praise her made her heart swell with a mixture of pride and humility. She realized that doing what was right, even when it was difficult, could lead to profound impact. Her mother, who had entered quietly to witness the outcome, could hardly contain her pride. Fatima had always known her daughter was intelligent, but seeing her navigate such a high-stakes situation with grace and courage was overwhelming. She held Amina's hand, whispering words of admiration and love, and for the first time, Amina felt the full weight of her mother's respect and trust. The advisors, humbled by the revelation, expressed their gratitude as well. Some apologized for underestimating Amina's observations, acknowledging that they had allowed confidence and routine to blind them to subtle but critical errors. The Sheikh, however, emphasized that the focus should not be on blame, but on lessons learned and vigilance for the future. As the night fell, the investigation concluded with clear documentation of the scam and secure measures to ensure no further attempts could reach the Sheikh's business. The fraudulent documents were handed over to authorities, and the investigation was set to continue under proper legal oversight. What could have been a massive loss had been completely avoided, thanks to one young girl's courage and knowledge. That evening, as the villa grew quiet, Amina sat in her room reflecting on the day's events. She felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and pride. Her life had changed, though she knew it in ways more subtle than wealth or fame. She had learned that courage could be quiet but powerful, that knowledge could be a shield, and that doing what was right mattered more than any recognition. The Sheikh, meanwhile, reviewed the situation one last time before retiring for the night. He marveled at the role Amina had played. In a world where trust could easily be exploited, one sharp, honest, and brave individual had made all the difference. He resolved to not only reward her for her wisdom and bravery but to ensure she had opportunities to grow her knowledge further, understanding that the next time someone's sharp mind could be needed, she might be called upon again. By the time the villa settled into silence, the sense of relief was palpable. A massive scam, meticulously designed and potentially devastating, had been exposed and stopped. The Sheikh had learned a powerful lesson about humility, vigilance, and the unexpected places from which wisdom could come. And Amina, the young girl who had dared to speak the truth, had discovered the profound impact of courage, intelligence, and integrity. The morning after the investigation, the Sheikh's villa was bathed in warm sunlight, a calm and peaceful light that seemed almost symbolic after the tense days that had passed. Though the threat of the scam had been fully neutralized, the memory of what could have happened lingered in the minds of everyone present. The Sheikh himself walked through the halls with quiet satisfaction, aware that disaster had been narrowly avoided. Yet, more than anything, he was thinking about the young girl who had made it all possible. Amina sat in the kitchen, her small hands folded neatly on the table. She had watched the previous day's events unfold with a mixture of awe and humility, never fully realizing the impact of her words until now. Her mother, Fatima, had been quietly proud, her eyes shining with emotion as she observed the respect and gratitude that the Sheikh had shown toward her daughter. It was a rare moment where the household hierarchy seemed to dissolve, replaced by admiration for honesty, intelligence, and courage. Word of Amina's actions had already begun to spread among the staff. Some of the older employees shook their heads in disbelief, whispering among themselves about how a mere child could detect what experienced adults had overlooked. The younger staff looked at her with newfound respect, realizing that intelligence and sharp observation could matter more than age, position, or social status. Amina, however, remained modest, quietly observing the world around her. She had acted out of responsibility, not for praise, and she felt that the recognition, though humbling, was not the most important part of her experience. Later that day, the Sheikh requested a private meeting with Amina and her mother. Fatima, initially nervous about being summoned, followed her daughter to the study, unsure of what to expect. The Sheikh greeted them warmly, his demeanor kind but formal, as befitted a man of his stature. He gestured for them to sit, and then began to speak, his voice calm yet filled with genuine admiration. "Amina," he said, looking directly at the young girl, "what you have done is extraordinary. You have shown courage, intelligence, and honesty beyond your years. You have not only protected my wealth but also preserved the integrity of my business and reputation. For that, I am deeply grateful." Amina felt a rush of emotion she could hardly contain. She had never expected such words from someone so powerful. Her cheeks flushed with humility, and she lowered her eyes respectfully. "Thank you, Sheikh," she whispered softly. "I only wanted to do what was right." The Sheikh nodded. "And that is precisely why your actions matter so much. You have reminded all of us that truth and courage are more powerful than titles, positions, or wealth. Today, you have become an example for everyone in this household and beyond of what it means to act with integrity. He then turned to Fatima. Your daughter has remarkable qualities, which I hope you nurture and support. Her knowledge and courage are rare, and she deserves every opportunity to develop them further. Fatima's eyes filled with tears as she grasped her daughter's hand, feeling a profound mixture of pride and gratitude. The Sheikh did not stop at words alone. He decided to ensure that Amina's talent and bravery were recognized in tangible ways. He arranged for her to receive a full scholarship to a prestigious school, covering all tuition, books, and living expenses. He also promised to provide her with private mentorship in languages, literature, and critical thinking. Amina's education, which had once been limited by her family's modest means, would now be expanded beyond anything she had imagined. The announcement brought a wave of excitement and relief for Amina and her family. Fatima could hardly contain her joy. She had always wanted a better life for her daughter, a life where knowledge and hard work could open doors rather than limit them. Now, thanks to Amina's courage, that dream was becoming reality. Beyond the immediate rewards, the Sheikh took steps to share Amina's story more widely. He called a meeting of senior advisors and employees and recounted the events that had prevented the scam. He highlighted the importance of vigilance, careful observation, and the courage to speak the truth, regardless of one's position. Amina's actions became a case study for the household staff, teaching them that respect, honesty, and attention to detail were essential in every task, no matter how small it might seem. Amina herself felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had acted because she believed it was right, but seeing the tangible effects of her courage, the recognition, the support for her education, and the lessons imparted to the staff made her understand the real power of integrity. She realized that one small voice, when guided by knowledge and bravery, could change the course of events for many people. The following days were filled with new experiences for Amina. She began attending advanced classes in Arabic literature and international communication, learning skills that would prepare her for future opportunities. The Sheikh personally ensured that she had access to tutors and mentors who could guide her in her studies. Each lesson, each new insight, reinforced the importance of dedication, curiosity, and critical thinking. Despite the newfound attention and recognition, Amina remained humble. She continued to help her mother with household chores, treated everyone with respect, and never let pride overshadow her gratitude. She knew that her courage had opened doors, but it was her continued hard work and learning that would keep them open. The Sheikh, meanwhile, ensured that the fraudulent individuals behind the scam were pursued through the proper legal channels. Authorities were contacted, and a thorough investigation was launched to prevent such schemes from targeting others. The story of the attempted fraud, combined with the young girl's intervention, soon became widely known among trusted circles, spreading a message about the value of honesty, vigilance, and courage. Amina's life, once confined to the modest limits of her household and school, had expanded in ways she had never imagined. She was now not just a maid's daughter, but a symbol of intelligence and bravery, a reminder that even those in humble positions could make a significant difference when guided by knowledge and integrity. As months passed, the Sheikh continued to support Amina's education, providing her with opportunities to travel, meet scholars, and gain exposure to a world that had once seemed distant. Each experience deepened her understanding of language, culture, and human behavior. She began to dream of a future where she could use her knowledge to help others, just as she had helped the Sheikh. Through it all, the lessons of courage, honesty, and vigilance remained at the heart of her journey. She had learned that doing what is right often requires speaking up, even when it is difficult or frightening. She had seen firsthand how careful observation and knowledge could prevent harm and create opportunities. And she had discovered that integrity, combined with courage, could earn respect and open doors in ways she had never imagined. Years later, when Amina looked back on the day she had spoken up in the Sheikh's study, she remembered the trembling in her hands, the pounding of her heart, and the fear that had nearly held her back. Yet she also remembered the quiet strength that had guided her to speak, the sense of purpose that had driven her actions, and the overwhelming relief and pride she felt when the truth was recognized. That moment had changed her life forever, shaping not only her education and career but also her understanding of responsibility, courage, and the power of knowledge. The Sheikh, who continued to manage his vast empire with wisdom and care, often spoke of Amina's actions as a defining moment. He would recount the story to colleagues, friends, and young members of his household, emphasizing that true intelligence is not measured by wealth or position, but by the willingness to act rightly when faced with difficult choices. Amina's courage had left a lasting legacy, one that inspired everyone around her to observe carefully, think critically, and speak truthfully. And so, the young maid's daughter who had once quietly observed the world from the shadows of a grand villa became an enduring example of bravery, honesty, and the extraordinary power of one voice. She had prevented a massive scam, earned the respect of a billionaire, and secured a future filled with knowledge, opportunity, and purpose. But most importantly, she had shown that courage and integrity are qualities that can come from anyone, anywhere, and that even the smallest voice can make the greatest difference.